What looked like a simple roster move at first glance is actually telling us something much deeper about what's happening behind the scenes in Detroit right now. And if you've been following this team closely, you can start to see a very clear pattern forming with how this front office is building and maintaining this roster. Rock Ya-Sin coming back on a one-year deal is not just about adding depth. It's about trust, fit, and a player who quietly became one of the most reliable pieces in a secondary that dealt with adversity throughout the season. When he was originally brought in, the expectation was limited. He wasn't supposed to be a centerpiece. He wasn't brought in to be a headline name. He was simply meant to provide depth. But over the course of the season, that role changed in a big way. He played all 17 games, and more importantly, he stepped into 6 starts when injuries hit the group. That alone already tells you how much confidence the coaching staff had in him. But the performance is what really stands out. 47 tackles, 9 passes defended, which is a career high, and maybe the most important stat of all, opposing quarterbacks completed just 52% of the passes thrown his way. That's 28 completions on 54 attempts, with a passer rating of 74. 7 and only 1 touchdown allowed. Those are not just solid depth numbers. Those are numbers of a player who can hold his own when tested, especially in a defense that demands physicality and discipline from its corners. And here's where things get even more interesting. Before arriving in Detroit, Ya-Sin had been on 4 different teams in 4 seasons: Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Baltimore, and San Francisco. That kind of journey usually tells you a player is still searching for stability, still trying to find the right system or environment. But for the first time in his career, he made it very clear that Detroit was different. He openly said that this was the first time he actually wanted to come back before the season even ended. That says a lot about the culture inside that locker room right now. Players aren't just passing through anymore. They're buying in, they're connecting with the system, and they're seeing something sustainable being built. And that matters even more when you look at the bigger picture of this cornerback room. There's been movement. Amik Robertson is gone after signing with Washington, which could have created uncertainty. But instead of scrambling, the Lions responded by keeping a player who already knows the system and has proven he can execute when called upon. On top of that, they've added new pieces like Christian Ezian and Roger McCreary, while still maintaining a strong core with DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold expected to lead the group. Then you still have Ennis Rakestraw Jr., Khalil Dorsey, and Nick Whiteside in the mix. That's not just depth, that's competition, versatility, and insurance across the board. And don't overlook one subtle but important detail. Ya-Sin even spent time cross-training at safety during training camp. That kind of flexibility is exactly what this coaching staff values. It gives them options, especially in a league where injuries and matchup adjustments can completely change a game plan week to week. But maybe the most telling part of all of this is his mindset heading into the new season. He's not satisfied. He specifically pointed out that he felt he left plays on the field, interceptions, forced fumbles, missed opportunities to take the ball away. That's a veteran who understands his role but is still pushing to elevate his impact. So when you take a step back and look at the full picture, this move isn't just about bringing back a familiar face. It's about continuity, reliability, and reinforcing a defensive identity that values toughness, adaptability, and accountability. The Lions didn't just re-sign a backup corner. They kept a player who proved he can step into pressure situations without the defense missing a beat, and who clearly believes he's in the right place to take another step forward. And now the question becomes even more interesting when you think about how all these pieces will come together in 2026. With this level of depth, competition, and internal belief already established in the secondary, do you think Rock Ya-Sin can carve out an even bigger role this season, or does this move say more about how the Lions want to rotate and manage this entire cornerback group moving forward? And that's where this situation really starts to unfold in a way that should catch every Lions fan's attention, because once you look beyond just the individual move, you start to understand how intentional this roster construction really is. Rock Ya-Sin isn't walking back into Detroit just to repeat the same role. The context around him has changed, and the expectations inside that room feel different now. When you have a player who already proved he can step in during high-pressure moments and deliver consistent results, the next logical step isn't to keep him in the exact same box. It's to see how far you can push that reliability. Think about what he already showed. He didn't just survive when injuries hit. He adapted quickly, handled matchups against quality receivers, and maintained efficiency in coverage. That kind of performance builds trust, not only with coaches, but with teammates. And in a secondary, trust is everything. One breakdown can cost you a game, so having someone who can step in without hesitation changes how aggressive a defense can be overall. Now layer that with the current structure of the cornerback room, with DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold expected to be key pieces on the outside. The competition isn't about replacing them, it's about creating flexibility around them, and that's where Ya-Sin becomes even more valuable. He's not locked into a single role. He's already shown he can play outside, he's experimented at safety, and he brings a physical presence that fits the identity this defense wants to maintain. This opens the door for multiple defensive looks. It allows the coaching staff to rotate players based on matchups, keep legs fresh over a long season, and adjust without having to completely reshape the scheme. And in today's NFL, where offenses are constantly attacking mismatches, having a player like Ya-Sin gives you options that go beyond the standard depth chart. But there's also a deeper layer here that fans shouldn't ignore. The Lions are building something where players actually want to stay. That might sound simple, but it hasn't always been the reality for this franchise. When a veteran who's been through 4 different organizations says this is the first place he genuinely wanted to return to, that reflects something real happening internally. It speaks to the environment, the coaching approach, and the clarity of roles. Players know what's expected, and when they perform, they're rewarded with opportunities. Not just contracts, but meaningful roles within the system. That kind of culture creates internal competition without friction, because everyone understands the bigger goal. And that's why his comments about wanting to take the ball away more this season stand out so much. He's not just looking to maintain his spot, he's looking to elevate his impact, turning pass breakups into interceptions, being more aggressive at the catch point, forcing turnovers. Those are game-changing plays. If he adds that layer to his game, we're not just talking about a reliable depth piece anymore. We're talking about someone who can actively shift momentum in key moments. Now imagine that within a defense that already has multiple contributors competing for snaps. That kind of internal push raises the standard across the entire unit. Every rep matters more. Every opportunity becomes a chance to stand out. And for a team with playoff expectations, that internal edge can be the difference late in the season. So this isn't just about what Rock Ya-Sin did last year. It's about what the Lions believe he can become within this system moving forward. It's about having a player who understands the scheme, fits the culture, and is still hungry to prove there's another level to his game. And when you connect all of that with the additions they've made and the players they've retained, it starts to feel like this secondary isn't just being rebuilt, it's being reinforced with purpose. Now it comes down to execution. Will Ya-Sin take that next step and become a true difference maker when the ball is in the air? Will this depth turn into one of the most reliable and adaptable secondaries in the league? That's what we're about to find out. And the more you sit with all of this, the more it starts to feel like this move could end up being one of those under the radar decisions that look small now but becomes incredibly important as the season unfolds. Because here's the reality, not every impact player on a winning team is going to be a headline name. Championships are built on players who understand their role, execute consistently, and are ready when the moment finds them. That's exactly the lane Rock Ya-Sin is operating in right now. But the difference is, he's already shown signs that he can go beyond just being ready. What makes this even more intriguing is how this coaching staff might choose to use him differently this time around. Last season, his opportunities came largely out of necessity due to injuries. This year, those same opportunities could come by design. That's a completely different dynamic. When a player earns snaps because the team needs him, that's one thing. But when a player earns snaps because the coaches trust him enough to rotate him in specific situations, to match up against certain receivers, or to bring a certain physical edge, that's when his role evolves into something much more strategic. And that's where you can start to imagine scenarios where Ya-Sin becomes a key situational piece. Third downs, red zone packages, physical matchups against bigger receivers. These are the kinds of moments where his skill set can be maximized. And if he delivers in those spots consistently, the conversation around his role changes very quickly. At the same time, you can't ignore how competitive this room is becoming. Every name in that group is fighting for positioning, for snaps, for trust. That kind of environment doesn't just improve individual players, it sharpens the entire unit. It forces consistency. It raises the floor. And for a defense that's trying to take that next step, especially in high-stakes games, having multiple players you can rely on instead of just a couple couple of stars is what separates good defenses from great ones. Another important layer here is durability across a full season. 17 games, plus potential playoff runs, demand depth that can actually perform, not just fill space. Last year already showed that injuries are part of the equation. The difference now is that Detroit isn't just hoping to survive those moments. They're preparing to handle them without a drop in performance. And that's exactly where Ya-Sin fits into the bigger picture again. He's already proven he can step in without the defense losing rhythm. If anything, he stabilized things when called upon. That kind of reliability is extremely valuable over the course of a long season, but it all circles back to that one key point he made himself, taking the ball away. Because if he turns those near misses into actual turnovers, everything changes. Interceptions, forced fumbles, those aren't just stats, they're momentum swings. They flip field position, they energize the team, and they can completely alter the outcome of close games. So now you're looking at a player who already checks the boxes in terms of consistency, physicality, and adaptability. And the only missing piece is turning good plays into game-changing plays. If that happens, this conversation isn't about depth anymore. It's about impact, and that's why this storyline is still developing. It's not finished. It's not locked into one outcome. It's a situation where the foundation is already there, and now it's about whether that next level actually shows up on the field. So as everything starts to take shape heading into the season, keep a close eye on how his role evolves early on. That's going to tell you a lot about what the coaching staff truly believes he can become in this defense. And as you keep connecting all these dots, it becomes harder to ignore that this isn't just about depth, competition, or even stability anymore. This is about identity, because what Detroit is quietly building on defense, especially in the secondary, is a group that doesn't rely on just one or two standout names to carry everything. Instead, it's a collective where multiple players can step into meaningful roles without the system breaking down. That's not accidental, that's intentional roster design, and Rock Ya-Sin fits right into the center of that idea. He represents that bridge between being overlooked and becoming essential. A player who wasn't brought in with big expectations, but earned his way into relevance through performance, consistency, and adaptability. And when a team recognizes that and brings you back, it sends a message, not just to him, but to everyone in that locker room. If you perform, if you fit, if you buy into what's being built here, you will have a place. Now think about how powerful that is over the course of a season. Younger players see it, veterans respect it. It creates a standard where nothing is handed out, but everything is attainable through execution. That's how you sustain success, not just chase it for 1 year. But let's take it a step further. What happens if injuries hit again? What happens if matchups force adjustments week after week? What happens if certain players struggle? Or if offenses start targeting specific areas of the field? This is where Detroit is in a much stronger position now than in previous seasons. Instead of reacting, they can respond with options. Real options. Players who have already shown they can handle responsibility. And again, that brings the focus right back to Ya-Sin, because he's already been through those situations. He's already answered those questions on the field. The unknown now isn't whether he can step in, it's how far his role can expand if given consistent opportunities. There's also something else worth paying attention to: confidence. Not just individual confidence, but unit confidence. When a secondary trusts that